Sunday's matchup with the Dolphins will be the most revelatory game of the season for the Browns. And I'll tell you why, coming up in the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. We will find out a lot about the state of the Cleveland Browns and Kevin Stefanski's job status with the franchise on Sunday with the Dolphins game, why you shouldn't expect the team to make a switch to Shedeur Sanders anytime soon, and last week the Browns made two trades. Who could be next? We talk about all that and more. I do want to thank you for being on every day with the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed. And today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So people are jokingly, or maybe not jokingly, on social media calling Sunday's matchup between the Browns and the Dolphins the who gets fired first bowl. I've seen that joke made. I've seen other jokes made. And I understand obviously where those sentiments are coming from. What I think is interesting about that narrative, that conversation, that topic in general, is that I do think if the Dolphins lose to the Browns on Sunday, I think Mike McDaniel probably would get fired on Monday if he loses that game. So it's another 1-5 team. It's almost like if you can't beat that team, who can you beat in this league right now? Obviously, we saw the comments from Tua Tagovailoa and what he had to say about the team meetings that guys aren't there for, or that they're skipping and they're missing. All those different things. Things are not good there. Things are dire straits. And they are on the brink, it feels like, of imploding, that Miami team is. And so that's because that's the state of the Dolphins right now. I think Mike McDaniel absolutely would get fired on Monday if he loses to the Browns here on Sunday. But I don't think if the roles are reversed and the Browns lose to the Dolphins, I don't think Kevin Stefanski would get fired. Like, I don't think that's going to happen if it's a loss on Sunday. My understanding is, like, listen, Jimmy Haslam's talked about it, how he's learned over the years owning the team, how to handle certain situations, how to approach certain situations. I think he is a little less trigger happy than he used to be, where he doesn't just make gut emotional decisions all the time. He tries to sort of think things through. And so I think they would like to get Kevin Stefanski, really everybody in this regime, to the end of the season before they make any of those harsh, drastic, pivotal decisions in terms of the direction of the organization. I don't think they would do it mid-season. Now, that doesn't mean that Sunday's game means nothing, though, for Kevin, because I do think that if they were to fire him, I do think, like, I talked about last week, like, looking back at the Steelers game is maybe where it all really started, but this game on Sunday is going to be telling because, I think it would set in motion, I think, is maybe the best way to put it, that the end is probably near for him here with the Cleveland Browns. That's what I think Sunday sort of becomes for him. Not that I think he's going to get fired on Monday if they lose, but I think it would start setting in motion. It adds more smoke and more heat to that fire for sure, more heat to the seat for Kevin Stefanski. It makes the conversation have even more legs. I think it speeds up that conversation a little bit as well. So I do think it sets in motion things unraveling on him from here in Cleveland with the Browns, whether it's the locker room starting to fracture a little bit more, whether it's just, murmurs from inside and outside the building about what the future holds for him. I think those things would start to get louder and louder, heavier and heavier, and it would start to sort of crumble underneath him if they lose this game on Sunday. And so, like I said, that's why Sunday is going to be the most revelatory game the Browns have played so far this season, because if you lose to that team, what does it say about you? That's the simplest way I can put it. If you lose to that Dolphins team, what does it say about you? They are on the brink, as I said, of collapse themselves. There's infighting. There's Tua calling out guys publicly, which once you get to that state, like, as you talk about the stages of, like, a coach getting fired, that's guys like lost the locker room. Things aren't going well when the players start calling people out publicly in the media. That's one of the biggest no-nos in a locker room. We've seen that here in Cleveland. We saw that not necessarily under Stefanski. I don't think it's that level. I don't think that's really happened much here since Kevin Stefanski's been here. But well, I take that back because before Baker was traded, there was, he sort of threw Kevin under the bus after that Steelers game, and there were some things said there. But Baker, I think, was the person I was pointing to most because he's been at the forefront of multiple instances where that was a problem in this locker room. We know that after the Myles Garrett helmet swinging incident, he was on the broadcast afterwards getting interviewed, and he said, we got to be smarter there. Like, that's something that players want you to keep in house. There was the comments about Duke Johnson's contract, right? When he didn't, it was kind of like, if you don't want to be here, then fine. We don't need you type thing. And again, those things are just big no-nos in the NFL. The teams want you to keep those types of matters in house and talk about them. And so once a team is at the point where they're going public with that stuff and they're griping about guys not showing up and they're griping about this and they're griping about that, that is a telltale sign that things are about to absolutely unravel and fall apart. That's the state of the Dolphins right now. And so they're coming in understanding like this is a game they might feel like they can win, but also that things are on the dam is nearing its breaking point. And so you can't lose to that team. Like, if you're the Browns, losing to that team would say a lot about you as a team and what direction you're sort of headed. Kevin was actually asked on Wednesday about the noise on his potential job security. And, I think this was a good answer from him in terms of like how he sort of deals with that. And it's very Kevin Stefanski-esque in that way. But I do think, he gives some credence to the idea that he knows it kind of comes with the territory.
Outside noise, pressure on you. How do you deal with that?
I don't listen to it. It's probably the easiest way. I grew up in Philly. I was a longtime listener of 610 WIP. So I understand the media role, and I understand, that for our fans, that's an important part of our interest in this game. But I also know in my chair that I'm currently sitting in that you can't listen to that type of stuff.
So again, Kevin giving credence to the idea that, like, yeah, it's part of what comes with the territory. It's part of what comes with working in the NFL, being in the NFL. It's part of our game. It's going to happen, but that he tries to block it out. No surprise. He tries to be that with his players as well and get them to block out a lot of that outside noise. So it's not something that's weighing on them or trickling into the locker room or whatever. I will say, by the way, as I'm recording this, there was an update from the Dolphins that Tua Tagovailoa issued an apology for his comments after Sunday's game. So trying to make amends, will it be enough to beat the Browns on Sunday is the question. And that's, again, I think what is kind of the big talking point here is, like, given the state of that Dolphins team, given the state of this Browns team, you're both 1-5. Like, the jokes about it being the who gets fired first bowl, I understand. I don't know that it's quite that for at least the Browns side of things. But this is like the where the unraveling begins for whoever loses this game. And so that's why I think it's going to be a revelatory one. If the team comes out and they play hard and they go win, it steadies the waters a little bit, and you can sort of, right the ship somewhat. If it's a loss, I think the walls start burning down, the roof collapses in. Like, I think you start to see a lot more of the collapsing going on, a lot of more of what you're seeing in Miami right now, or at least what we saw in Miami from Tua, the frustrations boiling over. That's what you're kind of flirting with here when you get ready for this game on Sunday. I'll say this. We'll do more of a preview, obviously, with Kyle Krabs in our crossover episode, and then on Friday where I give you my picks and all that. But what I will say about this matchup is that the reason sitting here today I feel like the Browns are going to be okay and win this game is that they have a group that is an elite group in the NFL. Their defense is elite. We know that, Super Bowl caliber group. The Dolphins don't have that. They have a few players that are really, really good that I think can certainly give the Browns some challenges, and their offense can score. We've seen them still be able to put up points. But can they do it against this Browns defense is the big question. I don't know. I'm not 100% sold on that. And so that's kind of like where my head's kind of at with this one, is that I think the Browns win because they have an elite unit that can dominate the Dolphins, where the Dolphins don't have that. But with the way this offense is playing, nothing is guaranteed. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they come out, what their energy looks like, and if they're sort of geared up for that game and ready to play, or if it feels like they're already throwing in the towel 7 weeks into the season, and that would be the kiss of death, obviously, for Kevin Stefanski in general. So most revelatory game of the season coming up on Sunday. We'll obviously talk about a ton more with you throughout the rest of the week. But as we think about the offense and we talk about the issues, I know everyone wants to know when the next quarterback change is coming. I think it's going to be a while till we see Shedeur Sanders. I'll explain coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. There's nothing better than following the NFL season with FanDuel. And frankly, the best part is they have options for however you like to bet. Maybe you're a prop bet person, and you want to bet on a player eclipsing a certain benchmark. Maybe you want to take that benchmark and combine it with a few others, or even throw a money line in there and build a same game parlay, or you can just simply ride the money line in real time as the action unfolds in front of you. The options are endless, and the best part is whether it makes every game more exciting, whether your team is playing or not. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs. With features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance, you can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go, while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
So those of you who follow the channel know that I am someone who really does want to see Shedeur Sanders play at some point this season. I'd love to see him. I would have loved to see him be the first quarterback that was up here. I think he's a talented player, and I'm curious to see what he can do at the NFL level, and for this Cleveland Browns team. But I will say, as we assess sort of the quarterback situation right now and the state of the offense, even understanding how bad it's been and how ugly it's been, I do think it's going to be a while yet until we see Shedeur Sanders under center for the Cleveland Browns. Obviously, barring injury, we always throw in that caveat. If Dylan Gabriel gets hurt, he's the next man up. So yes, he'll be out there. But I'm saying like a planned, mapped out, thought out process of getting him to be the starter for a game. I think it's going to be a while until we see that. So you got to remember, this team thinks very highly of Dylan Gabriel. They are going to give him time to grow. They spent all that time with him in the pre-draft process. They glowed about how much they enjoyed him in those meetings, and how they sort of put him through some workouts where he proved he could make every throw. The supercomputer brain comments that we always talk about in here, like those are the things that stood out to them. They think he's advanced in terms of his experience because he was in college for as long as he was, and he played for multiple teams and played in different systems. Like, he's seen a lot of different things. He's done a lot of different things. And so they like those qualities about him. He's got a lot of the intangibles that they look for. And so they're going to give him some time to sort of grow here. They're going to give him a leash to see what he can sort of do. And frankly, they should. Or else, what was even the point of making him the starter? Like, if you make him the starter and then within 3 weeks you're already benching him and going to the next quarterback, I think like that defeats the purpose of doing that. It can mess with the guy's confidence. It makes it harder for the offense, I think, to even get anything going because they're having another quarterback change in there. It's not an easy thing. So like, it would be a disservice to Dylan. It would be a disservice to, I think, the rest of the team if you just changed the quarterbacks again in a couple of weeks because you decided, well, hey, it's still ugly with Dylan Gabriel. Like, we all kind of knew what we signed up for here, right? Even when they made Dylan the starter, the idea that it was he's a rookie and it wasn't always going to be pretty, and there was going to be some rookie growing pains because every rookie has rookie growing pains, and it was going to take some time. Those are all valid and sound things. I don't think it has to be anything other than that. And on top of that, like, this offense is such a mess. It's hard to pin all the problems or a lot of the problems solely on him. I talked about this early in the week. I talked about this, I think, post game, really, after in Pittsburgh. Did he have some struggles? Yes. I think there's moments as I've gone back and watched the tape where he misses guys. He misses David Njoku, I think, on several occasions. These last two games where, like, he sort of came open late or like down the field and he just didn't see it as he was kind of going through his progressions. And I think some of that is like, trusting your eyes a little bit and still sort of getting a feel for the pocket. And when it's a pocket that's collapsing on you quickly, his clock is sped up internally. And so as much as there's room for improvement for Dillon, and he'd be the first to admit that, he admits that pretty much every week, that he knows he's still got to learn some things and do some things, and he looks forward to learning on the fly here. You also got to cut him some slack in understanding that the offense has been so bad and like around him. He's not getting a lot of protection up front. His receivers are dropping passes. It's not all him. And so it would be wrong, I think, to just pull the plug on him 3 weeks in because, well, hey, it doesn't look any better. Well, yeah, but I don't know what you expected for a rookie who's behind that same offensive line Joe Flacco was behind, who's got the same receivers who can't hang on to the ball that he's throwing to. If you're not going to give him time to learn and develop and be evaluated, again, what was the point of even putting him out there? So it was always going to be a sort of several week thing here for Dillon. He was always going to get a little bit of a leash to sort of play this season and see what he can do, see what he can bring to the table. I think that's a good thing. I think it's the way that they should handle it. Kevin Stefanski talks all the time about, giving or caring about these guys' development, the young guys' development, and making sure that they're putting them in their best situations to be successful, and trying to sort of bring them along. Changing out the quarterback after just like 3 weeks would not be conducive to that when there's a lot of things that are wrong and problems that are hindering him as well. That doesn't mean that, Shedeur Sanders can't play, but I would have said this whether it was Shedeur at first or Dillon at first. Like, if you're making that change, you got to give them some time here to see what they can bring to the table before you just pull the plug and go back to the other one. Because otherwise, then what are you left with? You got 11 games to go. If you pull the plug after this week or whatever, if they lose, like, you still got 10 games to go. And then what if things are still bad because the offensive line is so awful right now that it's hard to even function for any quarterback? Like, who are you going to go to next? Bailey Zappi? Are you banking on Deshaun playing at some point this season? My understanding of the situation is that they don't want Deshaun to see the field this year. So if they're trying to avoid that scenario, what other options do you have? You just keep going back and forth between the rookies. Like, that's not conducive to much progress for either guy either. I think it kind of ends up hindering both. So whether it was going to be Shedeur first or whether it was going to be Dillon first, I do think you had to give them a little bit of a runway to learn more about them, let them grow, let them develop in the offense, and hopefully get better. And then you can kind of go from there. That said, Shedeur is going to play. Shedeur is going to play at some point this season. This offense is too bad not to. Things will get out of, like, they're going to keep losing a lot of games. Maybe not this weekend, but they're going to keep losing a lot of games. There's going to be a point where you just have to say, all right, let's see what we have in the other guy. And you don't have to frame it in a way to Dillon that's like, you're being demoted here. It would just be hey, listen, we want to see what Shedeur can do a little bit too. Season's in the toilet. We're going to start him for these last 2 games or these last 3 games or whatever it might be. Now, maybe it happens sooner rather than later if we start the schedule's lightening up. You got the Dolphins, you got the Jets in a couple weeks. Like, those are games that the Browns can absolutely compete in and win. And so maybe those are opportunities to evaluate Dillon a little bit better because talent level is going to be closer. I would guess there. So, like, maybe if he's getting clean pockets all of a sudden and he can have more time to throw and he's still making a lot of those mistakes that we're seeing in spurts, maybe then it becomes, okay, now we have to go to the other guy because he's just not getting it done either. But we have to be able to see those things more clearly before we just pull the plug, and the Browns should pull the plug. So Shedeur will play. I want to see Shedeur play. I've been adamant about that. I wish he would have been the first quarterback up, but I don't think a quarterback change is happening in the near future, certainly not before the bye. I would probably guess that after the bye, when they get these guys off their feet and give Dillon a chance to, prepare off of a bye week, like, I still think he'd probably still be the starter at that point. But, and that's that Jets game coming back. But as you get later into November and then into December, I think is where you'll start to see this team pivot to, okay, we got to see what we have in our other rookie in Shedeur Sanders. And so that's probably the time frame that you're looking at for Dillon to then pave the way to Shedeur. I've got a handful of names of players after the Browns made 2 trades last week who could be next in line to be traded, and why I think one name that people keep bringing up to be traded is out of the question in my estimation. We'll talk about it coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. The NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be such a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and price jumps at checkout, it's frustrating as can be. And that's why I use GameTime. The app gives the advantage back to the fans. It became my go-to app, honestly, for buying tickets just last year. I bought tickets for my wife and I to go see Ohio State, Michigan. GameTime is fast, easy, and backed by the GameTime guarantee, where you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best prices, plus all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. I put up GameTime, and in a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. You can too. I'm talking about tickets to your favorite NFL games for as low as $100. Download the GameTime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket. Go download GameTime today. All right, so on the heels of the Joe Flacco trade last week and the Greg Newsome trade last week, I know everybody is talking about potential trade candidates for the Cleveland Browns. And I do think there is a legitimate list of guys that are in play here to be considered as trade bait, or players that could be on the move once you get to the trade deadline here coming up in a couple weeks, or even before the trade deadline here in a couple weeks, that could be on the move. Some of these make sense, some of these don't. I'll give you the names that I think make the most sense, and why I think one name, and Wyatt Teller, is probably more unlikely to be moved in my estimation. My feelings on it are that I don't think Wyatt Teller will get moved, and I'll explain why here coming up. But to give you sort of the gist of this here. So David Njoku, I do think, is at the top of the list. You have your tight end of the future in waiting with Harold Fannin. You're already using him a ton this year anyway. Having the 2 tight ends is nice. It's a luxury. Kevin Stefanski loves doing that. But in the last year of his deal, you haven't given him a new contract yet. He's getting up there in terms of he'll be 30 next year. I don't know if they have a lot of motivation to pay him right now. He certainly, I don't think, is going to have another Pro Bowl season this year where then you'd sort of feel that way. So I think David is probably next in line. If there's a team that's out there that's like, hey, we want a tight end, we need this, we need somebody, I think David is maybe first up on the chopping block here. And it's unfortunate because I know he's a fan favorite. He also has a dead cap hit of $24 million. Now, here's the thing. The Browns aren't shy about the fact that they're willing to the fact that they are willing to eat dead cap money from certain players. Like they don't care about that. They'll live with the results of that. But my thing is, there's so many contracts on this team that come with dead cap hits that they can't possibly trade like all these guys that have come up in conversations, because at some point, like, there's too much dead cap that you're eating, and you're not going to be able to function financially the following off season to make, your contracts all align if you have too much dead cap on the books. So I understand where everyone's coming from with that, but I don't think we can just blanketly say, like, Njoku's gone, Teller's gone, this guy's gone. Like, you can't just run down the list and be like, all these guys are gone, because at some point there is a give and take to to eating the dead cap, where it's like, yes, $15 million this year is different from $15 million in a future year, because the salary cap goes up. That's a very simple concept, right? It's basically like inflation. But at the same time, you can't eat so much. You can only eat so much dead cap in a single off season, even with that theory, being the prevailing thought that this organization runs on and being true. So once you trade David, assuming that happens, it's $24 million that you're taking on in dead cap money. Okay, you can live with that. You can make that work. And that money can't be spread out at that point because he's not on the roster anymore. There's no contract to spread it out over. Now, the reason I say I don't think Teller would get moved is this. He has a $19 million cap hit dead cap hit. If you were to trade him, it accelerates onto the cap. So that's, 19 million in dead cap. Okay. If it was on its own, if it was him over, David, fine. But once you add in like 19 million, you're upwards of like 50 million in dead cap that you're already eating between two players. And then you got to think about I don't know what their plans are for Deshaun at this point, but if they're trying to move off of Deshaun's deal, they're going to have to eat two big chunks of money over the next 2 years because they can June 1st cut him and then spread that out over 2 years, the dead money. And so that's nice to know you have that in your back pocket. But then you're talking about like 3 players eating up upwards of like $100 million next year in dead cap. Like that's not a conducive way to run and build around your team next year. So that's why I say, like, of the two, David's different. Like, you have a tight end already in the room. You have a guy that you can sort of turn to as the future at the position. Who's the future guard on this team? Zach Sinter's been inactive every game this season except maybe one. Like, they're clearly not seeing what they need to see from him from a developmental standpoint to think he's part of their future plans at guard. They don't. Joe Bitonio is probably going to retire at the end of the season. Like, you're sort of, out of luck when it comes to the guard spot. And everybody on this offensive line is going to be a free agent this year, except for if you're going with the original starters this season, except for DeJuan Jones, who will be back next year on his rookie deal. They'll probably throw him out there as the right tackle once Jack Conklin's off the books here and say, let's give it another whirl. But we know at this point, like, he can't stay healthy. So that's an issue for them. And so rebuilding the entire offensive line in one offseason on top of needing a quarterback, on top of needing receivers, on top of needing other things, maybe another corner. Well, maybe not after the Tyson Campbell trade, but there'll be other things they need to address. I don't know that that's conducive to like next year being better up front. Like, I think you need some continuity there. And if there's one guy that I want to bring back, it's probably Teller. He's 31. Yes. But you could, give him 3 years and spread out some of that dead cap money over the next 3 years, make it less of a burden. And then, you at least have somebody coming back that you can trust and rely on this offensive line. The interior guys have been better than the outside guys this year. But yes, there are still some problems. But Wyatt is one of the better of the group, and he's one of the better in the NFL. So if there's one guy that you feel like, okay, we'll bring back and sort of have some stability up front, I think it's Wyatt. Maybe that means you can trade Ethan Posick, and that's the other part of this. If you were to trade Ethan Posick, his dead cap money is like $4 million. It's a lot more manageable than what Wyatt's is combined with Njoku's. So I think all those things kind of come into play here. I view Wyatt as somebody who probably is back next year, and they give him an extension of some sort to spread out that money and make it a little bit more conducive and give themselves at least someone that they can depend on this offensive line, so they're not having to remake the entire thing from tackle to tackle. But maybe they do trade him. I don't know. I just think that the tea leaves to me suggest that you can survive a Njoku trade more so than you can survive a Wyatt Teller trade, because you need somebody on this offensive line for next year. And then the other guy that I was going to bring up in this conversation, I mentioned Ethan Posick maybe being more of a movable object or more of a movable contract because his dead cap's a little bit less, and he's also in the last year of his deal as well, and all these guys are on the last year of their deals, so that's part of the sort of common theme here. But the other guy is Jerome Ford. It would be a very minimal at this point, savings to move on from him. But if you can get some sort of pick for him, there's no dead cap beyond this year, so that's the nice thing. They can sort of get out of the woods and know, okay, he's off the books, and then next year it's a clean slate for the money that he's owed. So that's kind of a nice thing for the Browns. And I honestly think like there's nothing wrong with leaning into the fact that you have this room with 3 rookies in it, and you can kind of just embrace, like, we got Quinshon, we got Sampson, we got Raheem Sanders, who we haven't seen much this year because he's been inactive pretty much every Sunday, and rolling with that. So those are kind of some of the guys I have my eyes on. But again, as much as I think Wyatt Teller's name makes sense and people are throwing it around, I just don't know if I believe you can trade Wyatt too on top of Njoku and on top of other guys. I think you got to have somebody coming back on the offensive line next year. And he sort of feels like the one that you would do that with, extend, spread that money out, and kind of keep rolling that way. It's another episode Down with Your Dog Pound. Thank you for joining me as always to talk about your favorite football team. If you like what you heard, hit that subscribe button, make Locked On Browns your first listen every day, wherever you get your podcasts, and of course at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. As always, You can listen to the Locked On NFL podcast twice a day. Tyler the Madman Rowland is your morning episode. You got my guy Tony Wiggins as your evening episode as they break things down for you. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. I also like to remind you to keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. Thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again tomorrow with our crossover episode. Stay tuned. See ya.